This is UMass basketball.
I know this. I'm the most animated coach that you've probably ever seen on my team.
Thompson in the front court. Thompson will lay it in. And one.
Hey, he's just being Frank.
That's right. It is time for Just Being Frank. Man, we missed you last week because the Massachusetts basketball team was down in Puerto Rico, and we're going to dive into all that with head coach Frank Martin. Coach, welcome back. Did you get your toes in the sand?
Oh, you better believe it now. I mean, it can be negative 10 degrees. You put me near the ocean now. I'm touching that sand one way or the other. It's actually, we had a lot of stuff we did down there. And we played afternoon games, but there's that one day, and I'm real low maintenance with our guys on these trips. You know, we did all the work we needed to do here, and all I ask our guys is to be responsible, to show up to the things that we're asking them to show up to, and then when it's time to go play, just compete. And play the way we tried to prepare for 10 days here. And they were awesome. They were great, and they enjoyed watching. You know, I going into that last game, because I knew the best team we were playing against was the last day. I didn't tell the players that, but I knew it. And they just spent, what was it? What would have been like Sunday after the game, all day Monday, like out in the ocean, like in that sun, running around. The waves, the waves were aggressive, and they were messing with them waves. So for them to have the energy and the resilience to compete and fight, and on Tuesday, that last game, it said a lot about those guys.
Yeah.
That's what got me excited about it.
So you played 3 games. We'll talk about them. You also, I think, got a practice in before you left down in Boston to try and utilize as much time as possible. But you mentioned the competition there, and I think that's something that a lot of folks are curious about. I asked folks for some questions on social media, so I'll get to those too in this podcast. Yep. But how do you assess like what that competition level is through those 3 games? Tell us a little bit about the opponents.
Yeah, they were all-star teams. They the first team we played was younger kids. When I mean young, I'm not now 15-year-olds. I'm talking about 19, 20 years of age. They all played at what's considered like the B division. Remember, they have club teams down there. And they also, Puerto Rico's unique because it's Americanized, for lack of better words. So they also have high school basketball. But the basketball component is dominated by clubs, and that's basically the Boston Celtics. And there's a club, and everyone that's 9 years old that's in the proximity of Boston plays for that basketball club, and you grow up in it. And
these guys have played together for a little bit.
No, they have and have not.
Changes. All right.
They have and have not. It's they're not. They had practices just like we did, that leading into our game. You know, and the other thing that goes with that, Jerry, is anytime you show up representing an American university, it can say UMass or USA. The opposing team from that country views you as that, and so there's it's like that group of kids, they haven't had the opportunity to come play at American University, and so it gives them a chance to compete against American basketball players, and it's a big thing for them. You know, for our guys, it's just like a scrimmage.
Yeah.
For those guys, it's like this is the one game that we get to tell our family about, and so it was really competitive. But they were young, they didn't defend real well, and they had no size. So we were able to score at a high clip that game. We converted on the interior. We played fast. We had too many turnovers, but when you got so many freshmen and you're asking them to play so fast, you're going to have guys that there's a difference between playing fast and playing out of control. Big difference. And we played fast. We didn't play out of control. We just made mistakes while playing fast. And that's all part of it. You're asking guys to play fast and in structure. And when you got so many guys for the first time, that structure kind of gets in the way of playing fast sometimes.
What gives you that, I guess, how do you make that decision as an identity of the team to say, hey, we're going to play fast? Or, I'm sure you've had teams in the past that grind it out, slow it down, sit down, defend. Like what inspires, you as the coach to kind of steer that identity to play fast?
Yeah, I believe in playing fast. Always have. From my junior varsity coaching days, my teams have always played fast. Now, once you get into the season, I've never managed the speed that we play with based on the opponent. Like you'll hear some people say, well, you can't run with that team. Well, if I've told my guys to run all year and now all of a sudden I show up to a certain game and say, hey, guess what? We're not running against them. Our players immediately know that I doubt. So I don't pull them back based on an opponent. I do it like, when I was trying to build the program in South Carolina, we went through those first couple years. We had massive injuries. I mean, it was unbelievable. And we just didn't have depth. We had a team where we showed up to play at Georgia. And when you're building, Jay, and, people don't like to hear this, but when you're building, you're dealing with a lot of newness. So unfortunately, not every recruit works out because they don't like your structure. They don't like, one thing is telling people, like, when you come to school here, I'm going to hold you accountable for these things. Oh, yeah, I'm in. And then they show up and you hold them accountable for those things that you told them in recruiting and they don't like it. And, they leave or they keep fighting you and then you have to remove them from the team. Last time I heard, that's not being mean. That's trying to hold people accountable and show people that you're true to your word. And so we played at Georgia with 8 guys. Brian Steele was my 8th man going into the Georgia game that one year. So when you're in that place where you're limited with numbers, then in games, you got to pull them back. But if you look at our 4th year and 5th year, where now we built our teams at South Carolina, the fact that we always practiced fast and played aggressively, there's a reason those teams were as good as they were. And there's a reason we're the leading, we were the, can I say, I don't even know if this is proper sentence, the leading scoring team. Yeah, that sounds right, right?
The highest scoring team in the league.
Highest scoring team.
There you go.
Yeah, I knew there was something wrong there. The highest scoring team in the NCAA tournament when we went to the Final Four.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that because we play fast, and it's what I believe in.
It's funny when you mention that accountability. I had a general manager, I think my first year in baseball as an intern, and they sit you down and they tell you, you're going to work 16 hours a day. You're going to pull tarp when it rains. You're going to work in the concession stand. You're going to do all these different things. And then at the end of the year, half the kids that were interns quit and, the rest just don't show up sometimes. And he said, I'm going to film this conversation next year to show you saying back to me that you're agreeing to all of these things as you get into this social contract.
It's the biggest, you hear everybody like, and I use my profession because it's the one that everybody like. Do you know of any other profession where everyone in the world thinks they know how to do it better than the people that actually get it? And I'm not trying to defend us that get hired in it. I'm just talking because I screw a lot of things up. So I'm not trying to act like I know more than anybody. But I never I never go at a restaurant and hear people talking about, oh, that surgeon, he don't know what he's doing. He should have used a scalpel on the left side of the knee, not the right. I'm like, it's our profession. It's just people have opinions that it's a little easier than maybe what it really is.
Sure.
the X and O part, listen, all of us in this business, if we don't know X's and O's and we don't fight for what our X's and O's are, we don't survive in this business. The biggest part of this business is managing young people and holding them accountable so they understand, so they understand who they're destined to become.
Yeah.
Do you remember yourself at 18?
I do. Yeah. It wasn't great.
Well, and when you were 22, 23, were you a little different than when you were 18?
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Same here, and same here. And now 57, look at this. I'm a lot different than I was at 22, 23. But
okay. Well, were you pulling out what was remaining of any hair as you were coaching from the stands in this Puerto Rico trip? Because you let your staff coach. So I want to talk about that decision and what it was like for you and your perspective of not being on the sidelines and letting your staff coach and watching it from the seats.
Yeah, two things. Number one, I have a responsibility. Head coaches have a responsibility for everyone on their staff, just as every player. We hired our staff, and they didn't come work for me because I'm a dictator. They came work for me because they aspire to grow in the business. So I have a responsibility to help them in that journey. I'm fortunate. I don't know if what I do is the right thing or not. It's what I believe in, but Matt Figger, becomes a head coach. He's was coach of the year in the conference that he first got a head coaching job in. Brad Underwood's been coach of the year in 2 different leagues. David Kiefer at Southeastern Louisiana, coach of the year in his conference. And then I've got other guys that moved on, have become unbelievable success stories as assistant coaches. They just haven't got their break yet. But I believe in making my staff accountable from a work ethic standpoint. Number one, they have to learn in their journey how to earn the players' trust, using their voice and their mind. You don't get any better if you just follow the head coach. And so it was I ran practices, but like I do in every practice, I ask our staff to do a lot of coaching. It's the way I learned, and it's what I believe in. And so it was good for those guys. Obviously, Alan and Brett have both been head coaches, so that's nothing new for them. But Brian Steele's never been a head coach. So he has to manage a game and manage the substitution patterns. And it's easy to play the guys that do everything right. It's hard to play guys that fight your structure but are really, really talented. But young coaches make the mistake sometimes of playing the guys that are really, really talented but fight their structure. But Brian, that's something he had to manage in that moment. And then the second part, we got so many new players. When you're coaching a game, you're worried about the next play, and you're facing the court, so you don't see what's going on behind you. I wanted to sit on the other side of the court, and I wanted to see our team. I didn't want to see the game per se. And I've seen them practice enough. I know talents. I wanted to see how they interacted, their facial expressions when Brian or Brett or whoever took somebody out of the game, when someone made a mistake, who was helping and who was into themselves. That's what I wanted to live and feel. And I left there even more excited about our team after seeing their willingness to help each other and to accept coaching. That's great. That's good to hear. One of the questions that we got was a pretty apparent one, I think, when you're talking about seeing the team for the first time. Our good friends at UMassHoops.com asked, and they do a great job, by the way, of documenting the history of Massachusetts basketball. So thank you guys so much. Are they Twitter guys? I think it's just one guy. Yeah. Well, you need to, when we're done here, you need to show me who it is so I can give them a shout out then. Okay. Because the so-called UMass Twitter fans think I'm a bad guy. So if you tell me they're good people, I'll
Well,
I
so
got to jump on there and give them a Twitter.
UMass Hoops does a great job of just. There's a web page that like documents every game that UMass has played since he's been putting it together. So anyway, he just asked, which of your guys impressed you over the course of the 3 games?
Oh man, Matt Cross is in a different place right now. I think we talked about this a couple.
We did, yes.
Matt, our season went. I don't want to say down the toilet, but our team lost personality. And we lost our way when Matt got sick, and then he came back and got hurt. And when we lost him for that period of time, heading into the end of the season, we lost our mojo. But Matt's taken a huge step forward as a human being, which has allowed him to grow as a player. And I think Matt's had as good a summer as any player I've been around. That doesn't mean he's going to average 30 points, 20 rebounds a game, but he's prepared himself to have tremendous success next year. And I think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think Matt's growth here over the next 6 months is going to be fun to watch and fun to be a part of. But Matt, like that last game, he didn't make shots. He had 23 points, 17 rebounds, and he played men. Like those guys were 28 years old. Like we're playing like older dudes, and they had decent size. I thought he was real good. And then Daniel Sanford, I thought had his first 3 or 4 practices weren't great, which I kind of he's being asked to practice differently. I'm not saying right and wrong. That's not what we're here for. We're all different. We do things differently, and as he makes the adjustment to live under the world that we try to create here, I thought he didn't practice as well. But as the summer went on, he practiced better and better and better. And then I thought he went down there, and I thought he played really, really well. I'm really excited about Daniel. Josh. Josh couldn't practice with us up until the week before we left because he was not in school because he was still finishing his degree down at St. Francis, PA. So Josh not in shape right now. And, it's he's disappointed in himself that he's not in the shape he needs to be. But that's okay. He's an older guy. He's been running on his own, and he'll get back in shape. He's a proven collegiate player, but he gives us a guy like that second game. We weren't scoring. We weren't playing great. So you got so many new guys that you wonder, like, okay, let me see what they do. We needed a basket. We were up 1 with 30 on the game and maybe 10 on the shot clock, and our guys, Josh demanded the ball. Our guys found him on that left block, took his time like an exchange, didn't lose his mind, like freak out. No, game's on the line. He knew it. He got to his left shoulder shot, jump hook, put it in the basket, and allowed everyone to relax so we can be better defensively, not as stressed out. And, he had some really good moments. Then all the freshmen, Rob Davis had games where his jump shooting and his energy was good. Jaden was who he is. He's one of those guys. People are going to love Jaden. If you know basketball, if you don't just read the stat sheet,
right.
You know basketball, you're going to love Jaden. It's
what makes you say that? Remember, for those that aren't aware, Jaden is from Massachusetts, the Rivers School. 6'4", 190 pounds. What makes you kind of assess that he's one of those guys that maybe is deeper than the box score indicates?
Well, he's now 203 pounds.
Okay. All right, we got to update that on the roster. We'll do that.
Because that's what he was when we signed him, and that's how committed he is to working it. His body just continues to grow and change, but and he cares about his nutrition. But he's not a great shooter right now, but he somehow figures out a way to make a three when you have to have one. He's an average ball handler, but he doesn't turn the ball over, and he's willing. Some guys are great ball handlers, but they don't have the courage to go make a play. He does. Just, you need a rebound, a loose ball. He's coming up with it. Defensively, I don't care if he's guarding a 6'7" guy or a 5'7" guy. He figures out a way to do his job. And then off the ball, he's one of those guys. He figures out how to get to the right place. And then the other part is him and Marquis Worthy. Like from freshman standpoint, they utilize their voices not to show people what they did, because a lot of guys, especially in this world we're in, they only talk when they make a positive play because they want everyone to look at me.
Right.
Marquis and Jaden, their voices never stop, and it's never about look at me. It's about helping their teammates, whether they're on the bench or they're on the court. It's those are the things Jaden does. That's why I said, if you just want to read a stat sheet, you're going to look at his stat line and he scored 8 points, 3 rebounds, 2 assists. You're going to say, if you pay attention to the game, he impacts winning, and that's why I said what I said.
Is that something that you maybe could notice or did notice in terms of, his recruitment and saying, hey, like this guy, could be maybe under the radar because he's not, putting up 30 a night?
Yeah. That's a difference between, I guess I'm going to piss people off here.
Let's do it.
That's a difference between actual coaching
Mm-hmm.
and running a fantasy sports team. When you run fantasy sports, you're looking for stats because, setting a good screen doesn't get you fantasy points. I get it. When you actually coach, if you want guys to have good stats, you better have a guy that sets good screens. And so I just share that, not from a critical nature of other people. It's who Jaden is. So I'm watching his team, his AAU team, and I was recruiting other guys on that team. And the more I watch the team, the more I realize them coaches, who I respect tremendously, by the way, really, really, really trust that guy. And so I called Brian Steele, and Brian says, yeah, they want us to recruit him. Talking about his coaches. And I said, well, I can tell you this. I keep watching this team. You're going to have a tough time telling me not to recruit him.
Yeah.
And so I kept watching. The more I watched, the more I realized he was the uniter on the team. He was the guy that, this guy comes out, this guy comes out, this guy comes in, this guy comes in. He never comes out. And again, you look at stat sheets, and his stats aren't bad, but they're not the ones that, if you're a stat reader,
right.
It's like baseball. I don't do it anymore. But I used to wake up every morning when I was a school teacher, and I'd open the newspaper and I'd go look at the box scores of every single baseball game. The guy that went 0 for 4 had a bad game. Now, a guy who went 0 for 2 probably had a good game, because back then you actually bunted. You remember that thing called the bunt, Jay?
I do, yeah.
Where you actually move the runner over to try and give your best hitter a chance to knock him in. You remember that?
I do. Hey, speaking of on Tuesday, your guy, Rio Gomez, went 5 innings for the Woo Sox. He was in line for his first AAA win, but the bullpen gave up the lead. They ended up winning the game, but he was great. So
I got to get over there and see those guys.
Yeah. He's been good. Okay. At TD Mass, Tom asks us, Frank's talked about this trip being a time to bond and find a leader, leaders. Did you see any of that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Did I see bonding? Absolutely. I saw a group of guys that 3 months ago, other than Rasul, Key, Matt Cross, had not been in a gym next to each other. Some of them knew each other from playing.
Right.
That's where AAU basketball has been great, is that a kid from Florida and a kid from the Midwest might have played against each other. And so there's an understanding of who they are. And that's the beauty of social media. Because of social media, all these guys kind of helped recruit one another, helped us. Because once this guy commits, they start reaching out to the other guys, and then they form a bond. But we've never lived around each other. And we did this summer. And don't put the cart in front of the horse, because in the summer everyone gets along. If you don't get along with somebody in the summer, like as a coach, you sit back and you're like, oh boy, we got issues here. But everybody got along on the team. They really helped each other. They're different, which I think it's an awesome thing, because that's how you form real teams, is when you got a bunch of guys that come from different places, and they learn to trust each other, because they learn how to respect their differences but embrace the good in each other. And can you imagine what I just said if we actually paid attention to that in life right now, Jay? Rather than just insult each other, just actually understand that we're all a little different. Let's respect each other where we're different, and let's embrace the good in each other. And then from a leadership standpoint, again, not because he's the oldest guy with me, not age, Matt Cross. I know Matt better than I know all the other guys on the team, because we recruited Matt really, really, really hard at South Carolina. So I got to know Matt before I ever coached him. Mm-hmm. And I think he got to know me a little bit. And so Matt, I thought Matt had a tremendous summer from that standpoint. From an ownership, he's owned his good and his bad, and he doesn't dwell on the bad, and he tries to grow every day. And then he's willing to go out there and help guys. And I thought Jaden Marquis for freshmen, I thought their voices were powerful. I think Jalen Curry, that is. By the way, I told my staff, like, this J, that J, OJ, PJ, and now we got Jalen, Jaden. I'm like, can we have a Tom, a Peter, and Larry? I mean, God, dog. But Jalen Curry, his playmaking, I think our players really respect. His competitiveness, I think our players really respect. I thought their spirit. Josh Cohen, who his energy, his enthusiasm for being on the court, for helping guys as he tries to get himself back in shape, I thought was good, because he's like player of the year in another league. He can show up here to all these young guys like, yeah, man, I got this. Relax. No, man, he's over there like helping guys, enthusiastic, and as he's trying to find himself. And so I those are the guys that come to mind.
Yeah.
But it's a fun group, man. They root for each other. It's when you got guys that don't care who's on the court, and they just want to help each other. As a coach, you see that, and you're like, man, I can't wait to get on the court with these guys and continue to build.
You know, I think we had a practice a couple weeks ago where you were kind enough to introduce myself and the rest of our staff to the team. You know, obviously a lot of new faces, and I thought it was impressive that each one of them like came up to me and the rest of our staff and shook our hands and said, "Hey, like, pleasure to meet you." It's the small stuff like that, I think, that really shows attention to detail and just a kindness, I think, that I was appreciative of. So thank you for that. I did see on the social media you guys managed to go to a zip line. So I was curious. No. Did I not see that?
You said you guys.
I was going to say, are you part of that or no?
No. I struggle getting on a balcony. I like, you'll put me up 270 pounds. You're going to put me up between two trees hanging from a line. Are you kidding me? I had somebody ask me while we were down in Puerto Rico, we were outside the ocean, and one of the players said, if you jumped in the water, would you fight a shark? I said, hell no. I said, now tell that shark to come out in the sand, and we'll tie one on. But in there, no, man. I heard they had, I didn't go. Heights is not my thing.
Yeah.
Like, Jay, I don't even know if they still do this, but you remember high schools, we had those senior trips, like at the end of your senior year.
Yep.
And in Florida, they used to have this thing called grad night, and they bus schools from everywhere to Disney World, and you were there at the park from 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. It was an all-night thing.
Oh, wow.
and then you bus back home at 5 a.m. And everyone, we're all, all the seniors at our high school, we're all geeked up and, get to go to Disney World. People from my neighborhood going to Disney World, it was too expensive. You just didn't get to do it very often.
Still is.
And who you telling? And it's different when I was worried about paying for myself, now paying for 5. I was like, woo. So we got there. We got the Space Mountain, that famous roller coaster.
Yeah.
I ain't doing roller coasters now. I'm
passed on that. Even as a kid?
Oh, no. My dad made me write this thing called the Wild Mouse, which is a crazy roller coaster. And I was probably, 5 years old. And when we finished, I was petrified. I was throwing up everywhere. And ever since that day,
no. Done.
No.
Well, hopefully the guys had a good time. One more question from our friend Tim Haley. And Tim, if you're listening, side note, I have that T-shirt that belongs to you. Favorite meal or snack had while visiting, without it being like a team meal? Did you guys have a good snack or something that the team you thought maybe enjoyed? Food-wise?
Man, I don't get mad. Like culture. Like the food I grew up eating is different than the food most players I coach grew up eating. I'm not one of those who's like, how do you not eat this food? No, man, there's some food I don't eat. Don't make me eat what I don't like. It's but our players are pretty simple, man. They want chicken fingers and chicken tenders and burgers and that kind of stuff. And you give them some culture food that's different than the culture food they grew up eating. They kind of look at it like it's got fingers coming out of something. Yeah. And
I mean, a lot of 18-year-olds or 19-year-olds are like that too.
That's what I'm saying. That's now me with food, you don't become 270 pounds because you're really picky in what you eat. So I love eating all kinds of food. Now that I like when I was a kid on my dinner table, we never ate greens. Never. Avocados and lettuce were the only 2 green things ever on my plate. So I learned to eat greens once I got older, not when I was a kid. And but mofongo, which is a culture dish down there in Puerto Rico, it's basically, picture this in your mind. It's the green plantains, the ones you kind of fry. Well, you mash them.
Like a volcano kind of.
Yeah, you mash them like mashed potatoes. Then you stuff them with a lot of garlic, and then you pick the meat, shrimp, pork, steak, whatever, and you stuff it with that. And it's just like full of flavor. And obviously it's going to make your gut grow too. It's really, really fattening. Have you ever seen anyone that eats that kind of food that's mad?
No, they're usually pretty like time to take a nap situation, Just
like when you eat all that high calorie food, I know it's not good for you. I'm not trying to endorse people be like sick that way, but because I've gone through my stages in life where I'm trying to shred my body, when I was young, and and I look good, but man, I was miserable eating lettuce and a can of tuna with no mayonnaise on it. Like I was miserable. Let's lift more weights. I was strong as an ox. And I was miserable wearing size 34, 32 pants. Now I'm like happy. I'm eating all that.
You're hungry all the time.
I'm happy, man. I like,
did you see any of the guys get a mofongo?
They tasted it.
Plantains. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. They tasted it. Some guys are braver than others.
Yeah.
Some guys are real finicky, and that's just part of being young, man. It's part of being young. You eat what you know. And it, like my wife, one of our first dates ever, we went to a raw bar, and I ordered oysters. And I love oysters. I used to shuck oysters at an oyster bar. So I crush oysters. They put them on the table. My dumb, I'm thinking, Jamaican, she looked at them oysters. She was like, what are you going to do with that? I was like, you never had an oyster? She's like, no, I'm not eating that. And now we don't go out to dinner without ordering a dozen oysters. She learned to appreciate them, and then and you put a little horseradish and a little sauce and Tabasco and a little lemon juice on it. Bam!
Wait a second. Hold on. There's an art to shucking oysters, right? And nowadays there's a glove and a special tool, right?
Pap, whip, boom, on the ice. We're ready to go, baby.
Without missing a beat, you could do it today with your eyes closed.
I in 1990, 92, I think it was before Hurricane Andrew, so it had to be 92. I worked at a Calico Jack's, which was a
that
bar.
Sounds awesome. Whatever it is,
it was incredible. It was a bar at night, and then a restaurant oyster bar during the day. Now the oyster bar was open all night too, but at nighttime it was a different crowd. And we used to have all these construction workers that would come in, especially on Fridays, at 5 p.m. and they'd sit all around the oyster bar. And each one of those guys would say a bucket of oysters, which is 48 oysters. And you just sit there. So you got guy here, guy there, 48. You got your 2 buckets. They got each one got a pitcher of cold beer, and you're over there just having conversations and popping oysters for those guys. Man, it was
that sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now here's the other side of the equation. So now there were nights where I bounced.
Right.
So if those guys didn't tip the oyster shuckers or the bartenders the right way, the nights I was bouncing, those guys weren't sitting at the bar.
Sorry, no room for you here. Yeah.
No, but there's 2 seats. No, man.
Those are spoken for people that actually tip.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, here's one of the last things I wanted to ask you about Puerto Rico, because you were able to catch up with some people from your past and from UMass's past. The Padillas were down there, JJ Barea as well. What were your conversations with those guys and interaction with them and the current team?
I owe a lot of my career. I got family that still lives in PR. And I hadn't seen my cousin I hadn't seen her since 2010. So it was great to see her and her daughter, who I had not seen since she was a little girl. And now she was a woman. I was like, wow. But I owe a lot of my career to Puerto Rican basketball players. You go back when I was when I was an assistant at the high school level, and Doug Edwards was on our team. The power forward on that team was a kid named Julian Rodriguez, who was a Puerto Rican. He passed away 3 years after high school in a car accident in Puerto Rico. And he was a great player and a great human being. And then I ended up coaching a guy named Poruco Latimer, who should have been a 12-year NBA guy, but it just wasn't destined to be. A great dude, great player. I got to connect with him. He and I have always stayed in touch, but we haven't seen each other in years. And then you start the collegiate deal, and think about the guy that I got credit for being a really good college recruiter was JJ Barea. Like when we got him at Northeastern, everyone said, "Holy cow, Frank can recruit." Like the reason I got credibility was because JJ believed in us at Northeastern. And in reality, my boss is the one that convinced him to come, not me. It's the way it works. The head, I'm not going to tell you who, but very successful head coach one time, his top assistant left, and top assistant made some stupid comment. And the guy that's been an established head coach forever, he said something along the lines like, "I've really needed his ass for the 25 years before he came to work for me. I think I'll be okay." You sign guys because of your head coach. As an assistant, you got to work. You got to create the relationship and do the convincing. But guys want to play for the head coach. That's the way it works. But I got credit for being a recruiter with JJ. Then I get to K-State, and Denny Clemente transfers to me when I became the head coach. And and Denny was phenomenal. And then Angel Rodriguez and Luis Colon, who also played for us at K-State, was my starting center. I've had an incredible run with Puerto Rican basketball players, and I know everyone in their federation down there. And Then Chuck Martin was my assistant at South Carolina, and Chuck's a native Puerto Rican, and so it's that island has had a lot to do with my success. And now, someone that I always knew from afar but never met, somebody that when I was a high school coach in South Florida, always grabbed my attention when he was playing at UMass was Edgar Padilla and Carmelo Travieso, those two guys. To be able to sit down with Edgar and his brother Goodell for the first time in person and just say stories, man, and just and speak in our native language, which I get it, man. We're Americans and we're proud. I don't, but Spanish is the first language I spoke. I never spoke English when I started kindergarten, and to be able to sit there with somebody in our native language and know that our journeys have kind of connected because of that ball, and just to hear, Goodell and Edgar talk about their journey, how they ended up in Springfield, and then how much here's the thing, man, after being around the TBT guys that Pat McWilliams put together and Mike Mannix coach and had those guys here for a week, and now being around Edgar, after being around DK, after being around Edgar's brother Goodell, them guys they didn't enjoy, they loved their time at UMass. I just talked to, Marcus Camby a couple days ago, and I'm not name dropping, I'm being honest. Isn't this what this is about being honest?
Just being frank.
He's starting business here in Amherst. He freaking loves this joint. It's being around those guys and how much they love this place. It's one of the things that I want to do a better job as I go into year 2, is to continue to put my arm around former players and bring them back, man. Bring them back because I've yet to be around one guy that said, man, I couldn't stand it up there. Not one. Every one of those guys just raves about their time up here.
Heard so many comments from everybody about the TBT guys coming back. In fact, I was at my gym the other day and a guy came up to me. He's like, "Hey man, I saw you talking to all my old buddies. Like I used to cut all those guys' hair when they were in college." Like the impact they had certainly was pretty impressive. Now, are you currently futuristically recruiting down in Puerto Rico? Because is there a possibility that pipeline will be open here at UMass again?
Believe you, like the old fellows like to say, believe you me, that is happening. It's there's young Puerto Rican kids playing everywhere around the United States, and I know 2 of them that I personally have identified. That I obviously naming names and being more specific can't be done, but I know 2 of them that after this trip, we've been able to kind of hit the fast forward button in recruiting a little bit. Now, does that mean that we get them? I don't know, but they're both really good players. That because of this trip, we've been able to not circumvent, but there's a trust factor when you're asking people to believe in you, to come play with you, and because of the common relationships, there's a trust factor in place that I think will be real beneficial for our opportunities there.
Direct flight from Hartford, by the way. It's like 4 hours. It's nothing. It's great. Easy to get to, in and out of. Coach, I think we've got a lot of other things we can check in on, but we got the non-conference schedule came out. We can talk about that. You got a new commitment as well. But why don't we save those for next week? And just I'm going to leave it here for you if you have any final thoughts or things you want to mention, since we didn't get to connect last week.
Yeah, after not doing it for a week, I was.
You got a lot to say.
I was worried about you. I
was over all week over at football, hanging out with your buddy Don Brown. You went to a football practice, right, or a couple? What were your thoughts or takeaway on football?
I love football. I grew up playing football. I learned how to learn through a football practice. whole method is still the way I try to teach.
Interesting.
When I can teach that way, it's the most effective I am as a teacher. It's the way I try to break down a basketball practice. It's based on that. But Don is phenomenal. I walked out there and football. Like people say, Frank, why are you so loud? I don't know. Other people handle their business their way. When I teach, I'm in a basketball court. I don't just teach a player. I teach everyone on my team. So when I speak, I need everyone to hear what I'm saying. My voice has to carry. And now it's just the way I do things and the way I think I need to be for me to be frank with our players. But I walked out there and, guys are getting ready for practice, whistle blew, boom, dudes flying to their stations and get going with what practice. And there's that one distinct voice that you can hear throughout the whole stadium. And that's old Coach Brown. And
yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
He's the best.
Yeah,
we can't wait for that to kick off.
Yeah, I said this, and I said this last year. I don't remember who I was speaking with. It might have been at our media day because, they're right in the middle of the season and they weren't winning yet. I said, they're going to win. That's not an option. They're going to win. That's how good Don Brown and his staff and they're going to get it done. Their energy, their enthusiasm, their passion is contagious. That's why I love football practice. I think football is the ultimate team sport.
Yeah.
And that's why I love going to football practice.
It's like a symphony. There's like organized chaos everywhere. You're like, they got, you break it out and then they come back together. Then they're, doing all different drills. It's really exciting to watch. So hopefully, really excited about that. Excited about obviously the whole campus coming back in a couple of weeks. And congratulations, Coach, on those 3 wins down in Puerto Rico and a successful trip.
It was great, man. It's the more you get to know about your people and find out who your people are when you're in competitive environments, not practices. When we all sign up for winning and losing.
Yeah,
that's part of the component. We can't lose perspective on growth and let's get better. That's what it's about. But we also understand that at the end of the day, we're all going to be judged on the scoreboard. And that's the reality of our journey is when somebody keeps score. And you find out about who we all are when we're in that moment. And having the opportunity to see our guys in 3 competitive environments where they're keeping score, that reaffirmed to me we got the right guys in this program.
Sounds good, Coach. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you next week.
You got it, Jay.
All right. I'm Jay Burnham. That's head coach Frank Martin, and he's just being Frank.